Welcome to the Mom and podcast. I'm Suzanne Kearns, mom and writer, LGBTQ and sex ed advocate, and this week, award banquet attendee. I am not getting awards. My children are getting awards, in particular
Well,
the
you
girl.
deserve all the awards.
Why don't they have an award banquet for the parents? That would be nice. Although at one of them, they did have all the parents stand.
I would say for your high school grad, like, you did it. You got her all this way.
Yes. I drove places. I did not draw the things, though. Anyway.
And I'm Missy Stevens, mom and writer, foster child advocate, and this week, board transitioner. I am handing over the reins to a new swim and dive board at high school.
I am so excited for you.
I am too. I'm still going to have a lot to do, but not the same level. So I'm really excited.
Yes. And big props to the person who is taking over that role for you, because it's an important one. And I know that you put a lot of love and attention into it. So
I did.
Yay. And speaking of people who do a lot for their kids in their schools, our guest today is Whitney Myers. Whitney is a mom and owner and founder of Sacred Stories, an Austin, Texas-based company specializing in video biographies. Sacred Stories uses interviews, photographs, and more to create mini documentaries for families. She has her graduate certificate from the University of Connecticut in Life Story Practice and Research and is a member of the International Center for Life Story Innovations and Practice. Whitney also enjoys speaking with groups about the art and science of reminiscence, different methods for sharing your story, and the important work of listening. I mean, so cool. And I am personally thrilled to have Whitney here, because whenever anybody asks me, you're supposed to, like when you're writing a book, especially a nonfiction, you're supposed to know who this ideal reader is. And I always say Whitney, which people don't understand what that means. But this is the Whitney when I say that, if anybody's ever heard me say that before, just because she is just the most perfect example of this great mom who had a great idea and had the courage to take each next best step to make it a reality. And so I'm really excited for other moms who maybe are in the same boat to learn from her. So welcome, Whitney. So excited.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Missy, for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to meet Suzanne's ideal reader too, because I have had Whitney in my mind as well. So, and we learned some about you in your bio, but we wondered if you could give us the Whitney 101, just where you started and what decisions led to where you are today.
Sure. So out of college, I worked for 11 years in the Lutheran church, both at a congregation here in Austin and then for like a group of Lutheran churches in the surrounding area. And I'm really proud of that work. And I learned a lot during that time just about hospitality and listening and creating spaces for people to be known. And volunteers and volunteer management. I made some great friends during that time too, had a lot of fun adventures, and that informs the work that I'm doing now. I do a lot of volunteer work, as Suzanne knows, and one volunteer job that I did led to actually part-time work a couple years ago, working in memory care. And that was kind of unexpected, but also had a huge influence. Y'all can see kind of some things here, but had a huge influence on me, and the work that I'm doing just taught me about caregiving and being with people, memories, and not having our memories and what stories kind of shape people's lives. So all different kinds of work, from ministry to memory care, and just intentional time with my family as a stay-at-home parent also for a number of years. All things that are kind of relational based types of work. And not a surprise for people that know me. And that's just informed a lot of what I do now in this work of Sacred Stories. So
yes. And see, I love hearing all this, because Missy and I on the podcast talk a lot about how, like at school parties and at our PTA meetings, we spend so much time chatting about what our kids are eating for lunch or the field trip or something, and not talking about ourselves and our own interests and talents and hobbies and, things that we want to pursue. And for many years, we had that relationship in the sense that I had no idea what you had done before. And who knows who you could be sitting next to in the school pickup line, who you could partner with, or who could be, your next step to getting that cool volunteer gig or some job. So in having conversations and learning how to elevate conversations and learn about people, like what are some ways that besides when you're videotaping someone's, life story, that we can just in these little moments in our days start elevating the conversations that we have in those school pickup lines or that we have with people at a wine night or whatever it might be?
I mean, it's a little bit just being a little dorky, just
Mm,
being a little awkward, putting
Yeah.
ourselves out there. And I find I'm a person who's kind of not afraid to do that. And just like with PTA, for example, I remember one of our first meetings. I don't know if you were there, Suzanne, but back when we worked together, I was like, let's play a get to know you game. I'm kind of notorious for bringing like conversation starters or something
mhm.
to a PTA meeting, which is a no-brainer to me, but maybe kind of unconventional to some people.
And that made me sweat just a little.
I know. It does. And it makes me sweat a little too as the person doing it because I'm like, these people are going to think I'm nuts. And it's just sort of getting over that, being a little awkward. I think that's a leadership thing. A lot of good leaders that I know have that element of, I'm going to put myself out there a little bit to engage people. And I have a
Yeah.
PTA mom that I've worked with a couple years, and she teases me. She's like, here comes Whitney with her bowl of colored pieces of paper, and she's going to ask us to play some game. And it's a little bit of finesse, like not to
Yeah.
be overly pushy or demanding. Like, it's okay, give people the out, not to
Right.
participate. But for me with PTA, what is the value if I don't get to know these people that I'm volunteering with? So
Yeah.
it's maybe selfish in a way. It's just like I want to get to know these people. And so I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a tip, but I'm kind of known as conversation starter person. And even at parties, or just with family, friends, I'll be like, let's go around and say what we learned in this year or whatever.
Mhm.
And my friends kind of
Yeah.
look at me like, oh God, here she goes again.
But I love that because in
I
our
love it too.
PTA, I sat across from, I don't even know how many meetings, Kristen Finan, who is the founder of Caring Hope, which I've been on the board on for, gosh, is it 5 or 6 years now? But before then, I had no idea that she did that. I think she was just starting it at that point. But I started to really get to know her when she auditioned for Listen to Your Mother, when our friend Kristen Shaw and I were producing that. And I was just like, how ridiculous is it that I didn't know that she was a writer for our local Austin paper?
Right.
And I do think that having those discussions in those environments allows us to, yeah, take that next step and be like, hey, are you doing anything that I might be interested in? I mean, selfishly, that you could partner with or become involved with.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it.
I
Start
do
with the
too.
awkward.
Yep.
Everybody will be grateful for it.
And
Yeah.
one other thing I thought of when you asked that, just I hate the question, how are you?
Oh,
Mm.
yes.
Mhm.
That's just such a loaded question. And I've, open mouth, insert foot. I asked one time at a funeral, somebody, like the family member, I was like, how are you? And I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm like vowing to never ask that to anyone again.
Yes.
It is such a knee-jerk thing to say to people. Like,
Yeah.
it just comes out of our faces.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And usually
And
the answer
so
good does too, even though you might not be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the
exactly.
answer should be like, not great.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I often ask like just I mean, I'm thinking PTA again, Suzanne, because you mentioned it, but like just or in the school pickup line or something, I'm like, I'll ask, what have you been up to today?
Mm-hmm.
That
Mhm.
just kind of gives the person an opportunity. They could share something really heavy, they could share their hobbies, they could share their work. And it's just a little bit easier question, friendlier.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I've tried
Yeah.
it and it opens up some of those deeper conversations.
We interviewed Kat Velos, who's like a
I,
friendship
I listened
expert.
to
You
that
know,
one.
Kat,
Yep.
I love her.
Love
And
her too.
I have the calendar hanging in my laundry room, and it's
Mm-hmm.
alternative questions to all those go-to questions. And so great. Before I'm
Yeah.
leaving the house, I kind of take a look and I'm like, just give me one question that's not, where are you from? Is this month? It's alternatives
Yeah.
to that, but we'll link to it because it's great because we do
Yeah.
have our go-tos, I think.
Mhm.
And I think the
Yeah.
flip side of all of that is then you have to listen to the answers. And
You
we
get to listen
love,
to the answers.
yes, oh yes. Um, and you use the phrase the work of listening. And we really love that because it is work to do it and do it well. So how
Yep.
do we get better at it? I have 2 teenagers and a husband. And listening is a big deal in our house because I don't think anyone does it. So how do we get better at it?
Yeah. Well, we don't do it great in my house either. My family teases me because at home, I mean, it's just our sloppy habits too. But
Yes.
in my professional life, yeah, I've got some tips and skills, but at home I don't always apply them. And something you said, Missy, when I'm interviewing someone, they're nervous.
Yeah.
And it's vulnerable to be like interviewed by me and to be on camera, just like it is being on your podcast. It's vulnerable, but it's also vulnerable to listen,
Yeah.
like you said, because it's just like whatever someone's going to share might open up in me something I didn't want to, a place I didn't want to go in myself, or also then you feel compelled to do something. So it's vulnerable both directions, and we forget that sometimes. But tips for listening is practice. I mean, I know those conversation starters, going back to that, but it's games, just ways that you can interact with your family. Like sometimes those lead to a deeper conversation or unlocks, a deeper thing. But just playing a game with your family that's, we're gonna each reach into a bowl and just ask something that prompts something else. And it might be dorky, it might be silly, it might be not serious, but it might lead to something serious. And that's, you can do that with your spouse. You can do it with friends, kind of playing around with questions and answers. It helps us practice. It helps us be quiet. It helps kids like learn to listen to their parents too.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Right. I know, what a
I
concept.
mean, yeah. We've done that like highs and lows around our table or something as a family. And it's like, that's a way kids practice listening. Like listen to your parents high and low, and we'll listen to yours and we won't say anything for a minute.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a skill that can be developed.
I love that gift of being like, you can say this and we're not going to come at you with 20 questions of like, why was that your high? Or why was that your low? Or do you really think that should have been your low or whatever? Just say your thing and move along. We used to do that pre-COVID. We did that a lot. Like when you said it, I went, oh yeah. But then COVID sort of changed our family routines, and our routines don't lend themselves to that as much. And then the kids, of course, are also, I mean, they're teenagers and they're going 20 different directions, and we never eat dinner together anymore because they eat after practice and it's almost 9:00 and I have eaten by then. So it's just different, but we used to do that. I need to find a new time in our life to do that.
COVID, you were all together. You were all together experiencing the highs, and you didn't have to ask in COVID because you knew it
exactly.
all.
Like we lived it all together.
Do it in the family group text now. Be like, hey.
Actually a great idea.
Yes.
I mean, they communicate really well well-ish, but that's their mode.
Yeah, meet them where they are. Well, I find the thing I always do, and when you hear research, I'm sure you've heard this in all the training that you did about listening, is not trying to think about what you're going to say next and to actually just be present in what the person is saying. And I'm so bad at that. And I don't know, like, how do you ground yourself and just get more present in the answer without feeling like you have to have the next thing that you're going to respond to?
It's hard. It's practice. It's practice. Like listening, like anything else. I mean, it just takes practice.
Yeah.
And we fail at it.
Yeah, because I do feel like I have some sort of fear. Again, it's that sweat starts to build up. Because I'm like, what if I don't have anything to say in response to this, or I don't know what to say? I think it's really okay if we can teach ourselves it's okay to not know what to say.
Yes.
Hard one for parents.
Real hard.
Practice, practice, practice. And I think you've mentioned it a couple of times, but it'd probably be a really good idea to start one of those little bowls. I think that there's so many cute little like exercises or whatever online. We should link to one of those where people can make their own bowl. That can be our little to-do for today, is to
You're
to
like
make your
me
own
and you
bowl
have
of questions.
27 jars around the house. Like pick one of those jars.
I've got some questions you can link to.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
I've got some conversation starters that you can cut out, put them in a bowl. So
well, there you go.
I'll
You
send
just
it.
saved
You
me
can link
having
to
to
it.
Google. Awesome. And now, okay, I don't want to linger too much on the PTA-ness part of your life, but you really did set a very high bar for PTA PTA presidents everywhere. And we talk about that a lot as far as there's ways to get involved with your kids' schools that are not like I used to do, organizing the Lost and Found Rack, which is a very valuable service, but
Going
not
to say.
necessarily something you can put on a resume. Well, I
You made a
could.
lot of moms really happy, though, when that
Ugh.
$50 sweatshirt returned to their home.
Yeah,
Mm.
not this mom. But I think that PTA is one of those things where you can get really involved and also do things that are relevant to work experience or things that you can put on a resume or that translate to something that you might want to bring into a future job. So, did you feel that way for your role at PTA? And like, what were the things that you learned there that you could help bring to starting your own business or that just at least got you in that mindset of I'm doing some stuff with the other sides of my brain?
Right. Well, Suzanne, you're sweet. You put me on a PTA pedestal, but
Take it. Wear your crown
and
with
that
pride.
was my thing. That was or one of my things that I mean, just volunteer work. I think it's important giving back, and that just was a niche that I found, and my way of saying thank you to teachers and staff. It's other people have different ways of doing that, but that was kind of my way, and I am proud to put it on my resume. I'm proud of the work I've done with PTA, and I've met wonderful people, full-time working moms and dads and stay-at-home parents. And for my Sacred Stories work, I didn't do PTA to necessarily enhance the work that I'm doing, but I mean, these things all kind of connect, and it has enhanced and enriched my working life. It allows me to kind of use gifts that I had forgotten about or didn't know that I had, or be in community with people, because a lot of
Yeah.
Sacred Story stuff that I'm doing is by myself. So that fills a need for me.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those connections, like you said, Suzanne, at the beginning, just you never know where they might lead. Kristen Finan, who you mentioned, she's on my advisory group for Sacred Stories, being on this podcast, some clients that I have had through PTA work, an unexpected surprise. But a lot of my early clients were people who knew me,
Mm-hmm.
and PTA, way to get to know people. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm proud of the work I've done there, and it certainly links to what I'm doing now, just in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally does. And I relate to that so much. That sense of building a community and being in a community that's a little bit outside of what you're doing in the rest of your life, but it all ties together. The skills
Yep.
I've learned doing the things I do at school, like doing the swim board, I learned so much and I learned a lot about myself. And I think it's valuable work. I think that women should not, or men should not downplay oh, I'm just volunteering at school. Oh, I'm just on the PTA. There's
Yep.
so much more to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, we want to pivot a little bit and talk about starting a business. It's a huge leap, and a lot of our listeners have ideas and these things they want to do. What should they be thinking about? What do you know now, looking back with hindsight's 2020? What would you do differently? What do you wish you had thought about?
No surprise, just surrounding myself with people who would listen to my idea about Sacred Stories. And I can remember still where I was telling my best friend about this Sacred Stories idea, and just putting myself around people who would kind of allow me to process this with them, and push back with some questions. I actually worked with a professional for a year, just kind of helping me discern and think about work. And I
Yeah.
processed this Sacred Stories thing with her, and she listened. And I don't know, for me, thinking about like my own life and Sacred Story, maybe perhaps, or when I'm 70 or 80 or 90, if I get the opportunity to share my story, would I want to say I didn't take the chance to try it? So that's,
Yeah.
for me, kind of empowered me. I was like, I have this idea. I'm going to put myself out there. I don't know if it's going to work, but I feel like I would regret it if I didn't try it. And
Yeah.
Oh, I
but,
love that.
advice to listeners is just surround yourself with people, mentors. And I talk to a lot of videographers and photographers and people in this personal historian community, and just like, how do you do this? Some business owners I respected and just said, how do you go about this? And I'm still asking those questions. I'm asking that question, Missy, that you asked of people in my world. Like, what would you change? What would you do differently?
Yeah.
Mhm. And I love sacred story films in particular because my husband's aunt passed away several years ago after an extended battle with cancer. And so it was something probably very similar to a lot of the clients you work with who have this visibility into their future and want to save their stories and make sure that they're available for their children, especially because this woman's daughter was very young at the time, just starting college. And 20, 30 years down the line, it's nice to have something that you can hold on to and
Mhm.
remember. And so my husband's cousin actually gave her the gift of doing this. And he was not a professional as yourself, but he did a very nice job.
Mhm.
And we watched the parts of the video at her memorial service, and it
Oh, I
was
love that.
just such a beautiful, like, you would think that that would be, like, really sad, and definitely there was sadness to it, but there was so much laughter, and there's so many smiles, like, I was really surprised at how healing and what a wonderful experience that was,
Yeah.
because instead of just focusing on the end, you were, like, hearing from her and hearing her stories, and it was such a beautiful thing. So I just
That's
think,
special.
yeah, what you're doing is such a gift for the people, your clients who are actually having their stories told, but also to their
Mhm.
families.
Mhm.
And so many of us, I mean, we're all dying. I mean, some of us have more visibility into what
Right.
that time period might look like.
Mhm.
And I think everybody just wants to be heard before that time.
Yes. Yes.
And you give them that gift. So I'm sure that hearing these stories, everybody's having aha moments, but are you then seeing that? Like, are there moments when your clients are telling their stories after that process, things that their families say or things that they say, like that they wish they had done different or things that they didn't realize they had done so amazingly? Like, what types of aha moments are you seeing during these
Yeah,
recordings?
that's a good question. Little things like I had a gentleman tell me once that he really enjoyed the experience and it prompted him along. This adorable guy in his 90s, and he said, "I bought a voice recorder and I'm gonna tell more stories to my family."
Mm,
And so after the film, he was empowered to want to do more, and I thought that was really
That's really
cool,
cute.
really neat. He's a big fan and one of my biggest cheerleaders out there in his 90s.
yes.
Oh, I love it.
Um, I think a lot of people say it was not as bad as I thought it was gonna be, not as hard, and after it's over, they're like, that was pleasant," and forgot about the camera kinda thing. Just a lot of anxiety leading up to it for sure, and
Yes.
I understand that, but a lot of people say, "That was enjoyable and glad I did it." What I love for the individual, but even maybe more so for the family, is realizing that making a Sacred Stories film is creating a memory. Like, we're recording memories, but in the making of it is also a memory.
Oh,
And um,
Mhm.
there's a lot of excitement, like, leading up to the interview day with this person or people that I'm gonna
right.
interview. It's fun, like, they're getting ready and they're working with their loved one to pick out the outfit and what they're gonna
Mhm.
do and gathering photos, and that's like they're making a memory while we're recording memories and then watching the film. A few families have done, like, viewing parties or something, and
Yeah.
sharing in that. One lady told me, like, she and her father, who we did the film about, watched it together, and she said we held hands during the whole film,
Oh.
and I loved that. I'm just like, that is so, they'll remember that forever, just sitting in that
Yes.
room watching that film together,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I think that's cool, and that's unexpected. That's an aha moment for people because they're don't expect that that's gonna be the case, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the flip side of that? Like, have you been listening to someone talk and you think, "Oh my gosh," and it's an aha moment for you, and then you go apply it or think about it in your own personal life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a privilege. It's like every storyteller, I learn something. It impacts me. I mean, and then I have to review the films and watch the films. So I sort of memorize little pieces of their stories. Like, they really do kind
Yeah.
of live in
Mm.
in my brain and in my heart.
Mhm.
The pandemic There were a lot of aha moments for me. I didn't do a lot of work during that time, but I started doing some in that season and had the mask and face shield and the whole
Oh,
thing.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
But lots of aha moments, just like, I don't know, think of what these people have lived through. And here I am in my bubble, in my pandemic world moment. And I can look at them and think of what they lived through and translated to my life and just going, okay, we're going to get through this. And it doesn't have to be the defining moment of my life, which it
Mhm.
felt like sometimes in the pandemic.
Yeah, it does give you a
Right.
much bigger picture, a holistic picture of a life instead
Mhm.
of this
Yeah.
2 years or however
Yeah.
many, how many
Right.
years it.
Yep.
Right.
And just can't underestimate the power of listening. And that's an aha moment for me doing this work, but sort of every time it's just like some of these people are strangers to me. Like I literally meet them on the day of the interview. And y'all probably know this some in your podcast work, but I literally meet them on the day of the interview. I'm barely saying anything during the course of the interview. I mean, I'm asking questions and I greet them and have my skill set that I bring of the comfortability and hospitality and all that, but I'm barely talking about myself. And yet we leave that day and there's hugs and there's like this is a connection has been forged
Yeah.
because they felt heard and just listened to and I felt it too as being the listener, just a connection. So I
Oh,
don't know. It's
that's
important work. It's important
It's
listening
such important
is
work.
something we need more of. And you know,
yes. That's so powerful. And so I do think such an amazing gift to yourself, to your family. But as you said, people come away usually surprised this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that probably is
Yeah.
a barrier for people taking the step to actually book your services. So,
Mhm.
what are some of the nuts and bolts of it to give a picture of what it really is? So it's a
Yeah.
little less
Mhm.
intimidating.
Yes.
And how do people prepare? Do they get the questions ahead of time? Like what does that whole process look like?
So a family contacts me and I find out what they're looking for, what they are hoping to capture in the process, what they want to do with the film. And then I give them a quote and then we schedule the interview. And I typically don't give the questions in advance. I like it to be natural and not
Mhm.
scripted. I will give categories to people. I'll tell these are some of the things we're going to be covering. And I give the family an opportunity to, like, are there certain things you want me to talk about for sure? Are there certain things you don't want me to talk about? Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't go there. And sometimes families will suggest questions. One couple that I did, the grandkids started a little Google spreadsheet and put questions in there. So
So cute.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was awesome. And the interviews usually last about 2 to 3 hours. And then from there, 6 to 8 weeks later, you'll have your final film. I guarantee 30 minutes, but they often come out to 45 to an hour, broken up in chapters.
Yeah.
And I want it to be something watchable for a family and not
Right.
3 hours is a long thing. So we clean out, we edit, we clean out my voice and some odd things that might happen in the interview. Like a lady fell asleep one time during her own interview. I
During
mean,
your interview?
during her interview. Yep. She put herself to sleep with her stories, but we cleaned that up and edited that out. So
We've all had
So
those
cute.
days.
I mean, I have been accused of putting people to sleep, but I've never put myself to sleep.
yeah, that was learning it. That was one of those learn something new every time kind of
Oh,
thing.
it's kind of adorable though.
Oh, do they usually come in and do it with their family members or do they do it alone? Like what does that look like?
I prefer alone. Again, it's a vulnerability thing and a comfortability with me. I do reach out to the person I'll be filming and try to get some of that comfortability stuff going and working with the family. But I prefer to be alone just because it changes the nature of the interview if a
Mm-hmm.
family member's present, even if
For
they're
sure.
in another room,
Mm-hmm.
which I've had before. And one of my storytellers, she would like yell, like, do you remember what, year that was into the other room? And so
That has its own little charm, though. That's
I was going to
kind
say
of fun.
that's kind of
It was
sweet,
sweet.
but disruptive probably too.
Yeah.
As a fellow editor, I understand how
Yes.
that could be a
Yes.
challenge.
Yes. So I prefer alone, but I'll accommodate and want the person to be comfortable or people to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So including the children or whoever's hired me to do this.
Yeah.
So
And who does usually hire you? Do you find that it's usually a family member or that the person comes to you directly? Who's instigating this?
usually family member, usually children, grandchildren. Lots of grandchildren have hired me. So usually family members. I've had a few kind of self-hires, people that are really into the idea of legacy preservation type thing themselves or comfortable with themselves enough to put themselves out there for something like this. But had a couple of those, but mostly it's people gifting this for milestone anniversaries, birthdays, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Oh.
everybody has a story and
I
everybody's.
wish we'd had this for my grandmother and great grandmother.
Oh,
They
I
were
know.
great storytellers. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a gift. And this is kind of off topic, but kind of related. And we'll do a link to it in the show notes. But my stepdad used to do a thing at the Warhawk Air Museum in Nampa, Idaho. And they do this all over the country. And I forget, it's called the Veterans something. Oh, I link to it every Veterans Day and now I can't remember it, but it'll be in the show notes where they have volunteers go and interview veterans to get their stories. And it's a national archive, but
Kind of like StoryCorps, but for veterans.
yeah. And it's just, I mean, because every single piece of the wars or whatever their experience was kind of fits together into this big puzzle of the story. And same things with people's individual lives. And I think that a lot of people probably hesitate to do it because they're like, oh, what do I have to say? I just, I had some kids and then I retired and then and that was basically it.
Right.
And so I just can't encourage everybody enough to realize that no matter what they've done or think they haven't done in life, they have an important story to tell.
You do. Okay. So if people like us are listening saying, I wish I had done this and now I'm going to do it for someone else, where can they find you? Where do they find Sacred Stories Films online? And where do they find you to start the hiring
check
process?
it out. Yeah. I try to
just
put
to be nosy
resources
and
out
look and
there. I
learn more.
try to link to some like StoryCorps you meant, try to put resources out there for this idea of listening and story and doing that in families and in friends. To be a resource for people for all kinds of this type of work. And then also I have much that I offer. But so sacredstoriesfilms.com is my website. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Sacred Stories Films. And I'm on LinkedIn personally. You can find me.
And we're going to put all that in there. And I'm thinking, I have a little plan.
I know.
Yeah, I think I'll be reaching out.
I'm hoping our moms listen to this one. Or watch it on YouTube, however they like to consume it.
Or do I hope that she hasn't so that I can surprise her with this?
Oh, that's true. Well, you better surprise her by next Thursday because that's when it's coming out.
Maybe she's behind. Maybe she's behind on listening.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, so it is time, I think, for our Look, Listen, Learns then. For anybody who is listening for the first time this week, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And at the end of each show, we just spend a couple minutes talking about our Look, Listen, Learns, where we share things that we are reading, watching, learning about. And we don't like to put our guest in the hot seat. So, Missy, you want to start this week with your Look, Listen, Learns?
I will. All right. So I am looking at Saint X. I think it's Saint X. I don't think it's Saint 10, but maybe it is. Saint X on Hulu. And it's a psychological drama. Have either one of you watched it?
I've never even heard of it.
I had neither. Hulu showed it to me, and I was, I guess, just in the right mood to be like, all right, I'll give it a go. But it's about a college student who is murdered while she's on a vacation on a Caribbean island with her family. And she's with her family, including a much younger sister. So she's in college. She's a 7-year-old sister. And the story toggles back and forth between the 7-year-old sister who's now an adult and is trying to understand what happened and unravel it. And there are some coincidences that you're like, really? You have to suspend a little bit of reality. And then it shows her parents in current modern day as well. And then it goes back to the beach vacation. And I really, even though I think maybe I know what happened, they're doing a good job of there's enough people in the mix that you're like, it could be that guy, it could be that guy, it could be that woman. So it's interesting. And some of it's kind of dark and some of it's kind of slow. I just a little warning out there. There are moments when you're like, um,
Do
but
some editing.
it's still running and they're releasing it a week at a time. And so it's interesting enough that I'm like, oh, I want the next episode. I'm waiting for it
Okay.
and pretty well acted. One of the actresses who plays the girl who's murdered is David Duchovny and Taya Leone's daughter, and she's good. I like watching her. She's so watchable.
What are they called? The Nepo babies?
She's a nepo baby, I guess. Yeah, but I think she's earned her spot there.
Oh, good.
So I am reading Ejaculate Responsibly.
Nice.
Yes, making my kids cringe, and that is why we all need to read it. Like, I mean, literally, my 17-year-old turned it over one day. And I'm like, well, the back says why abortion is a men's issue. Like,
So either way,
and,
you gotta face it.
yes. And we got to see the author at Mom 2.0, and she inscribed it. I'm not going to hold it up because I don't want my kids' names in there. Well, I'll hold it like this. But it says, "You have a really cool mom." And so I'm like,
Oh,
see, guys, see, I am cool. They're like, you're not, because that book is making us really, really nervous. But it's a great conversation starter, and abortion is not a women's issue. And I will die on that hill. And I love this story. That's not a story. I love this book, and it is concise and really well written and makes some excellent points. So I recommend it. And I also recommend just throwing that on your coffee table. Just put it out there. Like, we need to be talking about it.
talk
It
about a
is not to be
conversation
hidden.
starter. That could be
Right.
put that in your colored
Right.
paper bowl.
I was
Right.
thinking
And
that.
maybe you don't always want to
Yeah.
listen to what people have to say about it, but it's a conversation we need to be having. And as the mom of two boys, men, I think about it a lot and we talk about it a lot. And they don't love that conversation, but I hope that it is in their heads and that they do think about it because they're one of them's headed off in a little over a year. Like, it's time to now is time to think about that, but it's really time when they are off being adults on their own.
Yes.
So,
And
I
the
love it. It's a
author
great
has
book.
an amazing Instagram account.
She's Design Mom on Instagram, and yeah,
They're redoing a house in France and have been like for the past 2 years. And it's such a fun little escape. I feel
awesome.
like I'm
Yes,
there
it is. And talk
knocking
about,
down
you know,
walls.
when you meet people and you're like, she's just cool. She's just cool.
Yeah.
And like just effortlessly cool. I don't think it involves any effort. I just feel like it is like who she is. So I really enjoyed getting to meet her in person after stalking her Instagram for many, many years. And she was just kind and wonderful and warm and super smart. So I recommend the book. And then my learn is sort of one of those nebulousy learns, but I think I started a new Mother's Day tradition. Remind me, Suzanne, next Mother's Day if I
Okay.
forget that I started a tradition.
I'm putting it in my calendar.
Yeah, we always say that the new year for us is when school starts, which I still stand by. Like, that is more than January 1st. School start is our mom new year. But by the time you get to Mother's Day, to that point in the school year, life is like real messy. Like, you might have started off great, but things have fully unraveled by Mother's Day. So I spent some time over the weekend just getting things in order. I have a long way to go, and I'm trying not to beat myself up about what is not done and just revel in what I have done. But I did like some physical cleaning out of some cabinets. I cleaned out under my bathroom vanity, which was
Ooh.
a disaster. I thought I had just cleaned it out, but I remembered I did it in the early days of COVID and in the
That's
lockdowns.
been
I'm
a
like, that
minute.
was 3 years ago. So I was like, I did not just clean it out. That was 3 years ago. No wonder it's a mess. So I like reorganized, cleaned out, threw out some expired things that had expired in like 2020, like threw those things out,
Yes.
found tampons and pads, which I no longer need that I'll be donating.
That's my favorite when I find those. I'm like, why do I have this?
Yeah. I'm like, I haven't needed that. I mean, I haven't needed that in way more than 3 years. I don't know why I saved them 3 years ago, but so it felt really good. And I think it was solitude. I was not with my kids doing that, but it was just this nice way to focus on me I cleaned out electronic files, and I did it slowly. I did it when I wanted to over the weekend, and started the week on such a high, just knowing I had done some of that. Like, I couldn't even really sleep very well Sunday night because I'm like, I did so much good work.
You're
So
so excited with yourself. I love
I know.
it.
So proud of myself. So excited to wake up in the morning and like go to my bathroom and be able to find everything. I'm like, this is great.
It is. What did you call it the other day, Whitney? Maycember?
December.
Oh, I'd never heard that term before, but
I didn't invent the term, but I like the term. Yeah.
Yes.
they're
I
so
love it.
similar in that it's like this, okay, all the grades are due, but at the same time, we're going to make your kids come to like every band performance, every award night, every like
Yes.
thing. And it's the same thing. It's like all the holiday recitals that just happen to be during finals week. Like, why are you doing everything the same month? So yes, Maycember is like my new
It's
favorite
And
term.
speaking of
Exhausting.
awards, Missy, we're going to give you one for cleaning out your bathroom cabinet.
I
Have
know.
a
you. I
special
will take
award
it.
ceremony.
Yeah.
I will frame it and hang it in my bathroom.
It's going to be a bow stuck to an expired bottle of shampoo. That's the
Yeah.
trophy.
A half-used box of tampons.
Oh my God, I love it.
So that is me.
Okay, Whitney, top that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my look is great show, Somebody Somewhere on HBO. Have y'all seen this?
Yes. Well, I heard it. I did it. That was one of my painting shows. So it was one of the
Oh.
shows that I heard in the background, but I didn't see because I was painting while I watched it.
I
So
love
Somebody
it so much.
Somewhere, starring Bridget Everett, and then also the fabulous Jeff Filler, friend of mine.
Oh,
How cool is that?
So just really fun to see him. Like I went to a small school. Everybody's going crazy at our school because Jeff Hiller's on this show, and the show is really, really good. And I'm only in the first season because I kind of started late, but I'm jumping on the bandwagon, and it's a really good show, and I'm proud of my friend Jeff. Such a guy,
Oh,
great
my.
Oh,
person.
now I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back.
He's so
Somebody
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that show has even though I was listening to it as I painted and not fully into it, just so much heart. It's
Oh,
just
yeah,
a
it
really
does.
lovely, lovely
Yes.
show. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a mix of funny and that heart's
yeah,
Which is my favorite. Funny and sad, funny
Yep.
and heartfelt. That's my favorite.
yeah, so
yeah.
good.
And then my listen, I love podcasts. I love y'all's podcasts. Y'all do a great job.
Thanks.
But I have a group of podcasts that I listen to, and one new one, Wiser Than Me.
Oh, Julia Louis Dreyfus.
Yeah, Julie Louis Dreyfus. Julia or
Yes.
Julie. Yeah. And I have listened to an episode. I listened to the one she did with Jane Fonda, and I mostly like it. I'm like, this is it's Sacred Stories. I'm like, I would name my podcast that. So,
Yes,
She's
it's
an
so
icon.
much
I
like
love
what
her.
you do.
Yeah. And
Yes.
just highlighting our seniors and the wisdom of people. So I like it.
Yes.
And then my learn, I'm behind the times on this, but I just got an air fryer.
Oh yeah.
And
sound
I
like me.
realized that you can hard boil eggs.
What?
You can hard boil eggs in the
I
air
had
fryer.
no idea.
You can cook eggs in the air fryer, and
Are they good?
they're amazing.
I might
I
like
need to
when we end
perfect-
this
I
run
need to
try that.
perfect the time, and I mean we're still working on that because I just got it. But yeah, so fun. Just like 12 minutes, and I don't know. You've got hard boiled eggs. So the wonders of the air fryer is my learn because I'm just
See?
experiencing this for the first time.
I've been
I am
so
going to
tempted.
try that.
You have one too?
We have one. We really almost never use it. Every once in a while, like the once a year, we have leftover French fries. Like, when does that ever happen? But if you throw them in there, really good.
Okay.
And yeah, I just we've tried things in it. Like, we've made a salmon recipe in it that was really good, but we've never done it again. Yeah, I don't know. We don't use it that often, so I'm trying to learn to use it. I think
Learn
there's a
new
lot you
ways
can do
to
with it.
use it. Yeah.
Yeah, like hard boiling eggs. I mean, seriously, I'm like, I'm running straight from here to hard boil some eggs.
You just could put one egg in there.
Just
I just need a really tiny one. Oh my
Ours
gosh.
is small because we don't use it very often. So I don't
Yeah.
know how many eggs I can do. We do have a smaller one. But
Well, when we had to replace our microwave, there were a couple of microwaves that were both. It was a combo thing, which I don't know. I'm like, I don't trust the combo thing because then what if the VCR breaks and the TV still's good? Like, that's just like, eh. But it also just wouldn't fit in our space, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
Okay, but I've been so tempted because I've heard they're amazing. Okay, we may have to ask that in the group, see if people vote for me to get a get an air fryer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
All
awesome.
right.
Well, what about you, Suzanne? What are you up to?
Let's see. We looked at Guardians of the Galaxy 3,
Yeah.
which was very sweet. We did, let's see, Friday night of Mother's Day
Mhm.
weekend. My family waited for me while I was at Mom too. So that was like my
That's
Mother's
nice.
Day gift, the fact that they actually waited to watch it for me. Thank you. But my son warned me ahead of time. And then my husband's like, yeah, I heard the same thing. That's a little bit of a tearjerker.
That's what
And
I've heard as
and
well.
it,
Was
it
it?
but it's still very funny and stuff. But
Okay.
it tugs at some serious heartstrings, and especially a warning to you, Missy. There is an excessive use of adorable baby raccoons, which I know are like CGI, but they were so cute.
No, they're real. I'm sure they're real.
Yeah. They just took a bunch of baby raccoons and put them in this movie.
Totally. That would totally work out.
Oh my God, the things they can do with facial expressions of animals that like
Yeah.
brings 8,000 emotions at one time. Oh my God, so cute.
Mm,
But
okay.
I highly recommend, even if you're not necessarily a big old action hero. There was a lot of heart and story to it. So highly recommend. And then let's see. Oh, I'm listening and related. The soundtrack of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So good. Because like the previous movies
Music's
have been kind of
always so good.
70s and
Uh-huh.
they're aging up. They even brought a point to where the mixtape now is going to the other decades. So it had Creep by Radiohead, which I love. Do You Realize by the Flaming Lips, which I just, oh my God, that song is kind of like looking at a baby raccoon's face. It brings like every
Yes.
emotion I've ever had comes from that song. We Care a Lot from Faith No More.
Mm,
So good. So highly, we already had my daughter download that, so we can listen to that
yeah.
all the
Like I'm making
time.
notes as you guys talk. I've written down so many things.
Yeah, it's really good.
I feel
And
like as your guest, I feel like I want to make notes, but I'm like, I don't have to. Y'all are going to
yes, you
link
can
all
listen.
this.
Yeah, you can. I
But
do
you
the
know what? I
same
mean,
thing.
we are recording it and listening to it, and we have to make the show notes, and I still will write things down during the show
Yeah,
because I just get excited.
I
I mean,
can't wait until it comes out. So yes, and then my learn was on a podcast I was listening to, but it was actually Julie Lythcott-Haims, which was a previous guest of ours, from her book How to Raise an Adult, and it was so interesting. I read the book, but I don't know if I even absorbed this point about how dangerous it is to tell kids, "I just want you to be happy."
oh, uh-huh.
Because that then puts this weird happiness pressure on them that like that is the only good thing to be, and that they feel like if they are in a place where they're not happy, that they don't want to burden you with talking about it, because if
Right.
it's your only want in life is for them to be happy, then why would they come and tell you when they're not?
Yeah.
So it's just this idea of like, I just want you to be however you are in this particular moment. And I just thought that was such a nice reminder, because God, I probably have said that 100 times to my kids, or at least thought it even about my kids.
Right.
Oh, I just want them to be happy.
I
But
know I asked them, like, "Are you happy in this situation? Like, is this good? Are you happy?"
mhm.
That's leading. That's a leading question.
You are.
I ask a lot of the people I'm interviewing. That's a question, just like, what is your wish for your children or your grandchildren if you have them? And that's an answer.
Just
That's
want them to be
often an
happy.
answer. Like,
Uh-huh.
Tell them they're wrong.
but I'm like, but this is good because it's like making me think, because I think that's a natural thing. Like, if someone asks you that, you go, I just want them to be happy. But it's like
Right.
to think about, like, what does that look like or what does that mean? And
Yes.
that's interesting, Suzanne. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
great learn. Like,
I
I'm writing it down as well. Sorry.
I've really been I mean, I've been thinking about it way too much, I think, because it really does bring this point of like, what is the point of a life well lived? It's not, I mean, it's nice to be happy, but we're allowed to feel all our feelings. And it is just this, it's kind of a meandering stream of all the different emotions, like looking at a baby raccoon's face. And so, yeah, you're allowed to feel all the feelings, and they don't have to be happy all the time, and they can talk to you about all the things they're feeling. So, yeah,
Right.
I loved it.
I like the
Wow.
word joy.
Joy
Yes.
Yeah,
is good
joy.
too.
It's more deep. It
It
Mhm.
kind of
is.
encompasses, hard stuff too, or sadness too, but it's like
Right.
joy. rather than happy.
Yeah.
Great.
Maybe we
Right.
wish our
Sometimes you can
kids
access
to
that
be,
joy.
yeah, to know joy or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
bet it's one of those words like they the Eskimo words for snow, how there's like 100 different words for snow. I feel like we need like a specific word for just whatever that is. Just
Whatever it
loving
is.
wherever you are at any
Contentment,
particular
but it's
time.
not even contentment. I don't know.
Kind of a contentment. Okay,
Kind of.
this is how I'm going to spend the rest of the day. I'm going to go ask ChatGPT. ChatGPT,
Oh,
answer this
that's
for
good.
me.
Yeah,
What's
we
a
now
word
have a
for this?
linguistics podcast. Let's do that.
Yes. But anyway, so that was just kind of a fun made me step back, especially as we are launching kids off into the world, into college. I mean, I think we're giving them a lot of these, this will be the best time of your life. And which, no, that's a lot of pressure. And like, just be
It is.
happy. And like, no, there's going to be rough times to it. So it's just a calibration of the way that we talk to our kids and set expectations
Yeah.
for their lives.
It's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Kind of gave me butterflies. I have to think about that a lot.
Oh, I made your tummy flip.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Like, how am I talking to my kids? I really need to think about it.
How am I messing up my kids? So many ways.
So many ways. Let me count the ways.
Yeah, but no. And speaking to the people who have messed up their kids, our parents, and we want to learn their life stories.
Yes.
No. I think that I have loved the idea. First of all, I love that you are doing this business, Whitney,
Thank
because I think
you.
there's no better person to really make people feel heard and be such an amazing listener. But I do think, even if you do not live in Austin, Texas, is it something people can do virtually? Have you done that, or do you prefer to do it in person?
I'll go wherever.
Okay.
If people will pay for that, but I also do virtual. I've done 4 virtually, and they're lovely. They're different, have a little bit different flavor, and they are only as good as that person's technology and kind of setup there. And
Yeah.
I work with them to kind of coach them on what to do, but it's no guarantees. But they're lovely. They're a great option.
Okay, I'm glad we mentioned that because, yeah, even if you do not necessarily live in Austin, Texas, if this is something you're interested in, we encourage you to reach out to Whitney. And then, yeah, even if it's not necessarily probably a fit for you, it sounds like there's probably a lot of other resources you can help direct people to. Because I just think whatever the method you do it, take some time to listen to some stories. Your kids, your parents, your friends, everybody wants to be heard. So thank you, Whitney. I'm so
Thank
excited
y'all
we got
for
to talk
having me.
about this.
Yeah,
I'm
appreciate
so
it.
excited to meet you. Thank you for being here.
It's great.
All right. Everybody have a great week.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for the Mom and ... podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you know someone else who could benefit from the episode, please be sure and share it with them. And while we're begging, please subscribe and rate us wherever it is you listen to podcasts. You can find links to all the things we discussed today in our show notes or over at our website, momandpodcast.com, with the A-N-D spelled out. In between shows, find us over at the socials, including our private Mom and Community Facebook group. The links to that group and all of our socials can be found at momandpodcast.com. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you more than you know. Now go out there and make your ellipses count.